The night of October 24, 1944, fell across the Philippine waters like a funeral shroud. Vice Admiral Shoji Nishimura stood on the bridge of battleship Yamashiro, his weathered hands gripping the steel rail as phosphorescent wake churned beneath his southern force. The 14-inch guns of his flagship pointed into the darkness ahead, where American forces waited with a technological superiority that would soon demonstrate the brutal mathematics of naval warfare. Behind Yamashiro steamed battleship Fuso, heavy cruiser Mogami, and 4 destroyers, a force that had sailed from Brunei Bay with the desperate hope of breaking through Surigao Strait and disrupting the American landings at Leyte Gulf. What Nishimura did not yet comprehend was that Rear Admiral Jesse Oldendorf had positioned 6 American battleships across the northern mouth of Surigao Strait in the most advantageous naval formation possible, crossing the T. West Virginia, Tennessee, California, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi waited in battle line, their 16-inch and 14-inch main batteries trained southward through the narrow waters. More critically, these American dreadnoughts possessed SG surface search radar and Mark 8 fire control radar that could deliver accurate gunfire at ranges exceeding 20,000 yards, even in complete darkness. The technological gulf between the opposing forces would become apparent within hours. American radar operators aboard the battleships could track Japanese surface contacts with precision that seemed almost supernatural to an enemy navy still largely dependent on visual sighting and primitive fire control systems. The 16-inch guns of the American battle line, when directed by radar fire control computers, could place massive 2,700-pound armor-piercing shells with devastating accuracy against targets that remained invisible to the naked eye. Admiral Nishimura had received intelligence suggesting American naval forces in Leyte Gulf, but the specific disposition of Oldendorf's battle line remained unknown to the Japanese commander. His orders from Combined Fleet demanded that Southern Force penetrate Surigao Strait and coordinate with Admiral Kurita's Center Force attacking through San Bernardino Strait. The plan required precise timing and assumed that American forces would be divided between multiple threats. What the Japanese Naval Command failed to anticipate was the concentration of 6 American battleships, 5 of them veterans of Pearl Harbor, positioned with clear fields of fire across the strait's narrow northern exit. The irony of the approaching engagement would not be lost on naval historians. 5 of the 6 American battleships, West Virginia, Tennessee, California, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, had been damaged or sunk during the Pearl Harbor attack on December 7, 1941. These same vessels, rebuilt with the most advanced radar fire control systems available, would now demonstrate American industrial and technological supremacy against the Imperial Japanese Navy that had achieved such devastating surprise nearly 3 years earlier. Lieutenant Commander Robert Bowling, gunnery officer aboard USS West Virginia, monitored the radar screens in the battleship's Combat Information Center as Japanese surface contacts approached from the south. The SG radar painted a clear picture of enemy vessels navigating the narrow waters of Surigao Strait, their positions updating with mechanical precision every few seconds. Fire control radar operators prepared to lock onto individual targets once the engagement commenced. The 16-inch guns of West Virginia's main battery, controlled by the Mark 38 director system, could engage targets at maximum effective range with a degree of accuracy that Japanese naval commanders would find difficult to comprehend. The American battle line formation maximized the firepower advantage inherent in crossing the enemy's T. All 6 battleships could bring their main batteries to bear against the leading Japanese vessels, while Nishimura's force could only return fire with the forward turrets of their lead ships. The geometric advantage was overwhelming, but the technological superiority of American radar fire control would prove even more decisive. Japanese battleships relied primarily on optical rangefinders and mechanical fire control computers that required visual contact with targets for accurate gunnery. Captain Bartholomew Hogan, commanding USS Tennessee, reviewed the tactical situation with his executive officer as midnight approached. American destroyer squadrons had already engaged the Japanese force in the southern reaches of Surigao Strait, launching coordinated torpedo attacks that damaged battleship Fuso and sank destroyer Yamagumo. The surviving Japanese vessels continued northward toward the waiting American battle line, apparently unaware of the overwhelming firepower concentrated across their line of advance. The waters of Surigao Strait had witnessed naval combat before, but never an engagement where technological advantage would prove so decisive. American radar systems provided not only target detection but also continuous tracking data that enabled fire control computers to calculate precise firing solutions even for maneuvering targets in complete darkness. The 16-inch guns of the American battleships, when directed by these advanced systems, could deliver sustained accurate fire at ranges where Japanese vessels would struggle to even locate their opponents. Admiral Nishimura's tactical options were severely limited by the geography of Surigao Strait and the disposition of American forces. The narrow waters prevented effective maneuvering, while American PT boats and destroyer squadrons harassed his formation from both flanks. Most critically, the Japanese admiral lacked accurate intelligence regarding the specific American forces positioned across the strait's northern exit. His outdated reconnaissance aircraft and limited radar capabilities provided insufficient information for effective tactical planning against an enemy equipped with the most advanced naval technology of 1944. The technological revolution in naval warfare had accelerated dramatically during the 42 months since Pearl Harbor. American shipyards had not merely rebuilt the damaged battleships but had equipped them with radar systems, fire control computers, and gunnery directors that represented the cutting edge of military technology. The 16-inch naval guns themselves remained essentially unchanged from their original design, but the systems controlling their employment had undergone fundamental transformation. Radar fire control eliminated the guesswork inherent in visual gunnery and enabled sustained accurate fire regardless of visibility conditions. Commander William Patterson, serving as fire control officer aboard USS California, coordinated with radar operators as Japanese surface contacts approached the predetermined firing zone. The Mark 8 fire control radar could track multiple targets simultaneously while providing continuous range, bearing, and speed data to the ship's gunnery computers. The 14-inch guns of California's main battery, though smaller than the 16-inch weapons aboard West Virginia and Tennessee, would prove equally devastating when directed by these advanced fire control systems. The approaching engagement would demonstrate the obsolescence of traditional naval tactics against forces equipped with radar-directed gunnery. Japanese naval doctrine still emphasized the decisive battle between opposing battle lines, with victory determined by superior seamanship, training, and fighting spirit. American naval technology had rendered such concepts irrelevant by enabling accurate long-range gunnery that could engage and destroy enemy forces before they could close to effective fighting range. The 16-inch guns of the American battleships possessed both the range and destructive power to annihilate opposing vessels at distances where return fire would be largely ineffective. Vice Admiral Nishimura's Southern Force approached its appointment with technological obsolescence as the clock moved past 0300 hours on October 25, 1944. Destroyer Squadron 56 under Captain Roland Smoot had already inflicted severe damage during coordinated torpedo attacks in the Southern Strait. Battleship Fuso had been hit by multiple torpedoes and was burning fiercely, her main battery silenced and her speed reduced to barely 10 knots. Destroyer Yamagumo had been sunk outright, while Destroyer Michishio was dead in the water with her engine rooms flooded. The surviving Japanese vessels, Battleship Yamashiro, Heavy Cruiser Mogami, and destroyers Asagumo and Shigeru, continued northward toward the waiting American battle line. The radar screens aboard USS West Virginia displayed a clear tactical picture as the remaining Japanese forces entered the northern approaches to Surigao Strait. Fire control computers calculated precise firing solutions based on continuous radar tracking data, while turret crews prepared 16-inch armor-piercing shells for loading into the battleship's main battery. The Mark 38 director system provided automated gun laying that compensated for the ship's movement, target motion, and atmospheric conditions. When the order to commence firing arrived, American 16-inch naval guns would deliver devastating accurate fire with a precision that Japanese naval commanders had never experienced. The technological advantage was so overwhelming that some American officers questioned whether the engagement would constitute a fair fight. Admiral Oldendorf had positioned his battle line to maximize both geometric and technological advantages, while Japanese forces approached with outdated equipment and inadequate intelligence. The 16-inch guns of the American battleships, when combined with radar fire control, represented a weapon system that could engage and destroy enemy vessels with minimal risk of effective retaliation. Lieutenant James Harrison, serving as radar operator aboard USS Maryland, tracked the approaching Japanese contacts with mechanical precision. The SG surface search radar painted clear returns from the enemy vessels, while fire control radar prepared to lock onto individual targets once the shooting commenced. Maryland's 16-inch main battery was trained to starboard, ready to engage the leading Japanese vessels as they entered the killing zone established by Admiral Oldendorf's tactical disposition. The irony of the strategic situation was not lost on American naval officers who had survived Pearl Harbor. These same battleships, raised from the shallow waters of Pearl Harbor and rebuilt with the most advanced technology available, would now demonstrate the industrial and technological supremacy that would ultimately decide the Pacific War. The Japanese attack on December 7, 1941, had awakened American productive capacity and technological innovation that would prove unstoppable once fully mobilized. Captain Robert Anderson, commanding USS Pennsylvania, reviewed the fire control solution with his gunnery officer as Japanese contacts approached effective range. Pennsylvania's 14-inch main battery was ready to engage, with armor-piercing shells loaded and fire control radar locked onto the leading enemy vessel. The battleship had been damaged during the Pearl Harbor attack but had returned to action with radar systems and fire control equipment that represented a quantum leap in naval warfare capability. The mathematics of the approaching engagement were brutally simple. 6 American battleships with radar-directed main batteries would engage the survivors of Nishimura's southern force in a narrow strait that prevented effective evasive maneuvering. The geometric advantage of crossing the T, combined with technological superiority in fire control systems, would enable sustained accurate gunnery at ranges where Japanese vessels could not effectively return fire. The 16-inch naval guns of the American battle line possessed both the range and destructive power to annihilate enemy forces before they could close to effective fighting distance. Admiral Nishimura continued northward through Surigao Strait, apparently determined to fulfill his orders despite the mounting evidence of overwhelming American superiority. His remaining vessels had already been reduced by coordinated destroyer attacks, while American PT boats continued harassment operations from both flanks. Most critically, the Japanese admiral lacked accurate intelligence regarding the specific American forces positioned across the strait's northern exit, leaving him blind to the magnitude of the firepower awaiting his approach. The technological revolution in naval gunnery had reached its culmination in the radar-directed 16-inch guns of the American battle line. These weapon systems combined the destructive power of super-heavy artillery with the precision of advanced fire control computers, creating a capability that could engage and destroy enemy vessels with unprecedented accuracy. Japanese naval forces, equipped with optical rangefinders and mechanical fire control systems, would face technological obsolescence in the most decisive manner possible. Commander Michael Thompson, gunnery officer aboard USS Mississippi, coordinated final preparations as Japanese surface contacts approached the predetermined engagement zone. Mississippi's 14-inch main battery was ready to commence firing, with high-capacity shells loaded for maximum destructive effect against lightly armored targets. The battleship's fire control radar maintained continuous tracking of assigned targets while gunnery computers calculated precise firing solutions based on real-time data. The approaching engagement would validate American investment in naval technology during the 3 years since Pearl Harbor. Radar systems, fire control computers, and gunnery directors had transformed traditional battleships into precision weapons platforms capable of delivering devastating accurate fire regardless of visibility conditions. The 16-inch guns themselves remained essentially unchanged, but the systems controlling their employment represented revolutionary advances in military technology. Vice Admiral Nishimura's determination to continue the attack despite overwhelming odds reflected the desperate strategic situation facing Japan in October 1944. The combined fleet's complex plan for the Battle of Leyte Gulf required Southern force to penetrate Surigao Strait and coordinate with Admiral Kurita's center force, attacking through San Bernardino Strait. Failure to execute this mission would leave American amphibious forces in Leyte Gulf unmolested and would represent another decisive defeat for the Imperial Japanese Navy. The radar operators aboard USS Tennessee tracked multiple Japanese surface contacts as they approached the northern mouth of Surigao Strait. Fire control computers calculated continuous firing solutions while turret crews prepared 16-inch armor-piercing shells for loading into the battleship's main battery. Tennessee had been severely damaged during the Pearl Harbor attack but had returned to action with technological capabilities that would have seemed impossible to naval officers of 1941. The technological gap between American and Japanese naval forces had widened dramatically during 42 months of warfare. American industrial capacity had produced not only replacement vessels but also advanced radar systems, fire control computers, and gunnery directors that represented the cutting edge of military technology. Japanese naval forces, isolated by Allied submarines and increasingly short of critical materials, had been unable to modernize their equipment to comparable levels. Captain William Roberts, commanding USS California, reviewed the tactical situation with his executive officer as the engagement approached. California's 14-inch main battery was trained to engage the leading Japanese vessels, with fire control radar providing continuous tracking data to the ship's gunnery computers. The battleship had been sunk during the Pearl Harbor attack but had been raised, rebuilt, and equipped with radar systems that transformed her into a precision weapons platform. The psychological impact of radar-directed gunnery would prove as devastating as its physical effects. Japanese naval officers had trained extensively in traditional gunnery techniques emphasizing visual ranging and mechanical fire control systems. The ability of American battleships to deliver accurate fire at extreme ranges in complete darkness would shatter Japanese confidence in their tactical doctrines and demonstrate the technological obsolescence of their equipment. Admiral Oldendorf's tactical disposition maximized every advantage available to American forces. The 6 battleships of the battle line could concentrate their firepower against the surviving Japanese vessels while remaining beyond effective range of enemy return fire. The narrow waters of Surigao Strait prevented Japanese maneuvering that might have complicated American fire control solutions, while destroyer squadrons continued harassment operations that disrupted enemy formations. The 16-inch naval guns of USS West Virginia represented the pinnacle of American naval artillery development. These weapons could fire 2,700-pound armor-piercing shells to ranges exceeding 35,000 yards with devastating effect against any naval target. When directed by Mark 8 fire control radar and Mark 38 director systems, these guns achieved accuracy levels that would have been impossible with traditional optical fire control equipment. Lieutenant Commander David Wilson, serving as Combat Information Center Officer aboard USS West Virginia, coordinated radar tracking operations as Japanese surface contacts entered the engagement zone. The battleship's SG surface search radar provided clear returns from enemy vessels, while fire control radar prepared to engage individual targets. West Virginia had been sunk during the Pearl Harbor attack but had returned to action with technological capabilities that represented a revolution in naval warfare. The approaching engagement would demonstrate the decisive importance of technological superiority in modern naval combat. Traditional factors such as seamanship, training, and fighting spirit remained important, but advanced radar systems and fire control computers had fundamentally altered the balance of naval warfare. Forces equipped with these technologies possessed overwhelming advantages against opponents relying on outdated equipment and traditional tactics. Vice Admiral Nishimura's Southern Force had been reduced to 4 effective vessels by the time it approached the northern mouth of Surigao Strait. Battleship Yamashiro remained operational despite damage from near-miss bomb hits, while heavy cruiser Mogami and destroyers Asagumo and Shigure continued northward toward their appointment with the American battle line. The Japanese admiral apparently remained unaware of the specific forces awaiting his arrival, though radio intercepts and radar contacts should have provided clear evidence of overwhelming American superiority. The technological revolution in naval gunnery had reached its practical culmination in the radar-directed main batteries of the American battleships. Fire control computers could calculate precise firing solutions based on continuous radar tracking data, while automated gun-laying systems compensated for ship movement, target motion, and atmospheric conditions. The resulting accuracy was so superior to traditional methods that American gunners could engage and destroy enemy vessels at ranges where return fire would be largely ineffective. Commander Robert Patterson, gunnery officer aboard USS Tennessee, reviewed final fire control preparations as Japanese contacts approached effective range. Tennessee's 14-inch main battery was ready to commence firing, with armor-piercing shells loaded and fire control radar locked onto assigned targets. The battleship's Mark 34 director system provided automated gun laying that would enable sustained accurate fire regardless of visibility conditions or enemy maneuvering. The strategic implications of American technological superiority extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation in Surigao Strait. Japanese naval forces had been unable to match American advances in radar systems, fire control computers, and related technologies due to industrial limitations and material shortages. This technological gap would prove decisive not only in individual engagements but in the overall outcome of the Pacific War. Admiral Oldendorf's battle line represented the convergence of American industrial capacity, technological innovation, and tactical expertise. 6 battleships equipped with the most advanced radar and fire control systems available had been positioned to maximize their firepower advantage against an enemy force equipped with outdated technology and inadequate intelligence. The resulting engagement would demonstrate the obsolescence of traditional naval warfare against forces equipped with radar-directed gunnery. The radar screens aboard USS Maryland displayed clear tracking data as Japanese surface contacts approached the predetermined firing zone. Fire control computers calculated continuous firing solutions while turret crews prepared 16-inch armor-piercing shells for loading into the battleship's main battery. Maryland had survived the Pearl Harbor attack with moderate damage but had been extensively modernized with radar systems that transformed her combat effectiveness. The psychological preparation for the approaching engagement differed dramatically between American and Japanese forces. American naval officers possessed complete confidence in their technological superiority and tactical advantages, while Japanese commanders faced the growing realization that their equipment and tactics were inadequate against advanced American systems. The ability to engage enemy forces at extreme ranges with devastating accuracy represented a fundamental shift in naval warfare that Japanese doctrine had not anticipated. Vice Admiral Nishimura's continued advance toward the American battle line reflected either supreme courage or inadequate appreciation of the tactical situation. His remaining vessels had already sustained significant damage from destroyer attacks, while radio intelligence should have provided clear evidence of overwhelming American forces positioned across the strait's northern exit. The Japanese admiral's determination to fulfill his orders despite these circumstances would soon encounter the brutal reality of technological obsolescence. The 16-inch guns of the American battleships possessed destructive capabilities that exceeded anything in the Japanese arsenal. These weapons could penetrate the heaviest armor protection while delivering high explosive effects that would devastate lightly protected areas of enemy vessels. When directed by advanced fire control systems, 16-inch naval guns could engage multiple targets simultaneously while maintaining devastating accuracy at ranges exceeding 20,000 yards. Lieutenant Thomas Anderson, serving as fire control officer aboard USS Pennsylvania, coordinated with radar operators as the engagement approached. Pennsylvania's 14-inch main battery was ready to engage assigned targets, with fire control radar providing continuous tracking data to the ship's gunnery computers. The battleship had been damaged during the Pearl Harbor attack but had returned to action with technological capabilities that would have been unimaginable to naval officers of 1941. The technological advantages available to American forces extended beyond individual weapons systems to encompass entire operational capabilities. Radar networks provided comprehensive surveillance of enemy movements, while radio intelligence offered insights into Japanese plans and dispositions. Fire control computers enabled precision gunnery that could engage and destroy enemy forces before they could close to effective fighting range, fundamentally altering the dynamics of naval combat. Admiral Oldendorf's tactical plan exploited every advantage available to American forces while minimizing the risks inherent in night surface action. The battle line formation concentrated maximum firepower against approaching Japanese vessels while maintaining optimal firing positions. Destroyer squadrons provided both screening and offensive capabilities, while PT boats conducted harassment operations that disrupted enemy formations and communications. The approaching engagement would validate American naval doctrine emphasizing technological superiority and concentrated firepower. Traditional concepts of individual ship combat had been superseded by integrated weapons systems that could engage multiple targets simultaneously with devastating effectiveness. The 16-inch guns of the American battle line, when coordinated through advanced fire control systems, represented a capability that Japanese naval forces could not match with their available equipment. Commander James Wilson, commanding USS Mississippi, reviewed final preparations as Japanese surface contacts entered the engagement zone. Mississippi's 14-inch main battery was ready to commence firing, with high-capacity shells loaded for maximum destructive effect. The battleship's fire control systems provided automated gun laying that would enable sustained accurate fire, regardless of enemy evasive actions or deteriorating visibility conditions. The mathematical precision of modern naval gunnery had eliminated much of the uncertainty that characterized traditional surface actions. Fire control computers could calculate exact firing solutions based on continuous radar tracking data, while automated systems compensated for variables that had previously required manual estimation. The resulting accuracy enabled American battleships to engage and destroy enemy vessels with efficiency that would have seemed impossible during earlier periods of naval warfare. Vice Admiral Nishimura's southern force continued northward through the narrow waters of Surigao Strait, apparently determined to penetrate the American defensive positions despite overwhelming evidence of technological and numerical inferiority. The Japanese admiral's persistence in the face of such odds reflected either exceptional courage or inadequate appreciation of the capabilities arrayed against his remaining vessels. The technological revolution in naval warfare had fundamentally altered the relationship between offensive and defensive capabilities. Advanced radar systems enabled early detection and continuous tracking of enemy forces, while sophisticated fire control computers provided precision gunnery that could engage targets at maximum effective range. These capabilities had shifted the advantage decisively toward forces equipped with the most advanced technology available. At 0351 hours on October 25, 1944, USS West Virginia opened fire with her 16-inch main battery at a range of 22,800 yards, commencing the last battleship versus battleship engagement in naval history. The radar-directed shells struck battleship Yamashiro with devastating accuracy, their impact flashes visible across the dark waters of Surigao Strait. Within minutes, all 6 American battleships were firing at maximum rate, their combined firepower creating a storm of steel that no naval force could survive. The technological superiority of American radar fire control became immediately apparent as 16-inch and 14-inch shells found their targets with mechanical precision. Japanese return fire was sporadic and largely ineffective, hampered by damaged fire control systems and the inability to accurately locate American vessels in the darkness. The crossing of the T formation, combined with radar-directed gunnery, created a tactical situation that approached one-sided slaughter. Battleship Yamashiro absorbed dozens of major-caliber hits as American fire control systems tracked her with relentless accuracy. The 16-inch shells of USS West Virginia penetrated her main armor belt with devastating effect, while 14-inch projectiles from other battleships destroyed her superstructure and secondary armament. Within 18 minutes of the engagement's commencement, Yamashiro was burning fiercely and listing heavily to port, her main battery silenced and her speed reduced to barely 5 knots. The effectiveness of American radar fire control had exceeded even optimistic pre-engagement estimates. Fire control computers calculated precise firing solutions despite the darkness and confusion of night combat, while automated gun-laying systems maintained devastating accuracy against maneuvering targets. The technological advantage was so overwhelming that Japanese vessels were destroyed before they could approach close enough to deliver effective return fire. Heavy cruiser Mogami attempted to reverse course and escape the devastating American fire, but radar tracking enabled continuous engagement even as she turned away from the battle line. The 16-inch guns of USS Tennessee and USS California maintained accurate fire at ranges exceeding 18,000 yards, their armor-piercing shells penetrating Mogami's citadel and igniting secondary explosions throughout her hull. The heavy cruiser's attempt to escape only prolonged her destruction while demonstrating the futility of traditional evasive tactics against radar-directed gunnery. The psychological impact of the engagement on surviving Japanese personnel would be profound and lasting. Naval officers who had trained extensively in traditional gunnery techniques witnessed the complete obsolescence of their equipment and tactics against American technological superiority. The ability of enemy battleships to deliver devastating accurate fire in complete darkness shattered Japanese confidence in their naval doctrine and demonstrated the decisive importance of advanced fire control systems. Destroyer Asagumo was caught in the crossfire between American battleships and cruisers, her light construction offering no protection against major-caliber projectiles. The 16-inch shells intended for larger targets passed completely through her hull before exploding, creating massive holes that flooded her engine rooms within minutes. The destroyer's crew abandoned ship as she rolled over and sank, another victim of the technological revolution that had transformed naval warfare. The Battle of Surigao Strait concluded with the complete destruction of Vice Admiral Nishimura's southern force, except for destroyer Shigure, which escaped under cover of darkness and smoke. Battleship Yamashiro capsized and sank at 0419 hours after absorbing an estimated 40 major-caliber hits from American radar-directed fire. Heavy cruiser Mogami was so severely damaged that she was scuttled the following day, while destroyers Yamagumo, Michishio, and Asagumo were all sunk during the engagement. The technological lesson of Surigao Strait was unmistakable. Forces equipped with radar fire control systems possessed overwhelming advantages against opponents relying on traditional optical gunnery. The 16-inch guns of the American battle line had demonstrated their devastating effectiveness when directed by advanced fire control computers, achieving accuracy levels that rendered enemy return fire largely irrelevant. This engagement marked the practical obsolescence of battleships not equipped with comparable technological systems. Admiral Oldendorf's tactical triumph validated American investment in naval technology during the years following Pearl Harbor. The radar systems, fire control computers, and gunnery directors installed aboard the rebuilt battleships had transformed these vessels into precision weapons platforms capable of engaging and destroying enemy forces with unprecedented effectiveness. The geometric advantage of crossing the T, when combined with technological superiority, had created a tactical situation that approached perfection. The strategic implications of American technological dominance extended far beyond the immediate results at Surigao Strait. Japanese naval forces had demonstrated their inability to compete effectively against advanced American systems, while the destruction of experienced naval personnel and irreplaceable vessels accelerated the decline of Imperial Japanese Navy effectiveness. The technological gap between opposing forces had become so significant that traditional concepts of naval combat were no longer applicable. Captain Bartholomew Hogan, commanding USS Tennessee, surveyed the aftermath of the engagement as dawn broke over Surigao Strait. The waters were littered with debris from destroyed Japanese vessels, while oil fires marked the locations where enemy ships had met their end. Tennessee's 14-inch guns had fired 69 rounds during the 34-minute engagement, achieving an estimated hit rate exceeding 75% due to the effectiveness of radar fire control systems. The precision of American gunnery during the Battle of Surigao Strait would be studied by naval officers for decades as an example of technological superiority applied with devastating effect. Fire control computers had enabled sustained accurate fire despite the darkness and confusion of night combat, while radar tracking systems had maintained continuous target designation throughout the engagement. The 16-inch guns of the American battle line had demonstrated their overwhelming destructive capability when directed by advanced fire control systems. Lieutenant Commander Robert Bowling, gunnery officer aboard USS West Virginia, reviewed the engagement's results with justifiable pride in his crew's performance. West Virginia had fired 93 rounds of 16-inch ammunition during the battle, achieving direct hits on battleship Yamashiro with remarkable consistency. The radar-directed fire had been so accurate that Japanese vessels were unable to close to effective fighting range before being destroyed or disabled by American gunnery. The technological revolution in naval warfare had reached its practical culmination in the radar-directed main batteries of the American battleships. These weapon systems combined the destructive power of super-heavy artillery with the precision of advanced fire control computers, creating capabilities that rendered traditional naval tactics obsolete. Japanese forces equipped with optical rangefinders and mechanical fire control systems had faced annihilation against technologically superior opponents. The Battle of Surigao Strait demonstrated the decisive importance of industrial and technological capacity in modern warfare. American shipyards had not only rebuilt the battleships damaged at Pearl Harbor but had equipped them with the most advanced radar and fire control systems available. This technological superiority, when combined with superior tactical position and numerical advantage, had enabled the complete destruction of an experienced enemy force with minimal American casualties. Vice Admiral Nishimura's fate remained unknown, until Japanese survivors were rescued from the waters of Surigao Strait. The admiral had gone down with his flagship Yamashiro, maintaining his position on the bridge as the battleship capsized and sank. His determination to fulfill his orders despite overwhelming odds had cost him his life and the destruction of his entire force, but had also demonstrated the courage that characterized Japanese naval officers even in the face of technological obsolescence. The aftermath of Surigao Strait would influence naval development for decades as the decisive importance of radar fire control systems became apparent to military planners worldwide. The engagement had validated American technological doctrines while demonstrating the obsolescence of traditional naval tactics against forces equipped with advanced fire control capabilities. Future naval construction would emphasize electronic systems and fire control computers rather than the heavy armor and large-caliber guns that had dominated previous generations of warship design. Commander William Patterson, fire control officer aboard USS California, calculated that his ship had achieved direct hits with approximately 80% of her 14-inch shells during the engagement. This unprecedented accuracy level reflected the effectiveness of radar fire control systems in eliminating the guesswork that had characterized traditional naval gunnery. The technological advantage had been so overwhelming that Japanese vessels were destroyed before they could deliver effective return fire against the American battle line. The strategic consequences of American victory at Surigao Strait extended beyond the immediate tactical results to encompass the broader Pacific War. Japanese naval forces had lost another irreplaceable battleship and experienced naval personnel, while demonstrating their inability to compete effectively against American technological superiority. The engagement had validated American naval doctrine while confirming the technological obsolescence of forces not equipped with comparable radar and fire control systems. The precision gunnery demonstrated by American forces during the Battle of Surigao Strait would be remembered as a watershed moment in naval warfare development. Radar-directed fire control had enabled sustained, accurate engagement of enemy forces regardless of visibility conditions, fundamentally altering the dynamics of surface combat. The 16-inch guns of the American battle line had achieved their maximum destructive potential when combined with advanced fire control systems, creating capabilities that Japanese forces could not match with their available equipment. Captain Robert Anderson, commanding USS Pennsylvania, filed an action report that emphasized the decisive importance of radar fire control in achieving victory with minimal American casualties. Pennsylvania had fired 48 rounds of 14-inch ammunition during the engagement, scoring multiple direct hits on Japanese vessels while receiving no damage in return. The technological superiority of American systems had enabled one-sided destruction of enemy forces that would have been impossible with traditional fire control methods. The Battle of Surigao Strait marked the end of the battleship era in naval warfare, demonstrating both the maximum potential and ultimate limitations of these massive weapons platforms. While American battleships equipped with radar fire control had achieved devastating success against technologically inferior opponents, the engagement also highlighted the vulnerability of surface vessels to advanced targeting systems. Future naval development would emphasize missile systems and electronic warfare capabilities rather than the heavy guns and thick armor that had dominated naval construction since the dreadnought revolution. The technological lessons learned at Surigao Strait would influence American naval development throughout the remainder of World War II and beyond. Radar systems and fire control computers had proven their decisive importance in modern naval combat, while the engagement had demonstrated the overwhelming advantages available to forces equipped with the most advanced technology. The 16-inch guns of the American battle line had achieved their ultimate expression when directed by radar fire control systems, creating capabilities that would define naval warfare for the remainder of the conflict. As the sun rose over Surigao Strait on October 25, 1944, the waters bore witness to the technological revolution that had transformed naval warfare. Japanese naval forces had faced annihilation against American technological superiority, their traditional tactics and equipment proving inadequate against radar-directed gunnery systems. The engagement had validated years of American investment in naval technology while demonstrating the obsolescence of forces not equipped with comparable capabilities. The Battle of Surigao Strait would be remembered as the moment when technological superiority achieved its most decisive expression in naval combat. American battleships equipped with radar fire control systems had destroyed an entire enemy force while suffering minimal damage in return, demonstrating the overwhelming advantages available to technologically advanced forces. The engagement marked the practical end of traditional naval warfare and the beginning of an era dominated by electronic systems and precision-guided weapons. The legacy of Surigao Strait extended far beyond the immediate tactical victory to encompass fundamental changes in naval doctrine and ship design. The decisive importance of radar and fire control systems had been established beyond question, while the engagement had demonstrated the obsolescence of vessels not equipped with comparable technology. Future naval development would prioritize electronic capabilities and fire control systems rather than the heavy armor and large-caliber guns that had characterized previous generations of warship construction. In the end, the Battle of Surigao Strait represented the convergence of American industrial capacity, technological innovation, and tactical expertise against an enemy force equipped with outdated systems and traditional doctrine. The 16-inch guns of the American battle line had achieved their maximum destructive potential when directed by advanced fire control computers, creating capabilities that Japanese naval forces could not match. The engagement demonstrated that technological superiority, when properly applied, could achieve decisive victory with minimal friendly casualties, a lesson that would influence naval warfare for generations to come. The technological dominance displayed at Surigao Strait sent shockwaves through the Imperial Japanese Navy's command structure that extended far beyond the immediate tactical defeat. Admiral Somu Toyota, Commander-in-Chief of Combined Fleet, received reports of the engagement with growing alarm as the scale of American technological superiority became apparent. Radio intercepts from the battle zone painted a picture of devastation, so complete that senior Japanese naval officers struggled to comprehend how an entire force had been annihilated without inflicting meaningful damage on the enemy. Captain Tamichi Hara, one of the few surviving destroyer commanders from earlier Pacific engagements, later wrote extensively about the psychological impact of radar-directed gunnery on Japanese naval personnel. The ability of American battleships to deliver accurate fire at extreme ranges in complete darkness represented a capability that Japanese tactical doctrine had never anticipated. Traditional concepts of night surface action, which emphasized superior Japanese training and fighting spirit, proved irrelevant against enemies equipped with technological systems that eliminated the advantages of darkness and surprise. The technical details of American fire control systems would remain largely unknown to Japanese intelligence services throughout the remainder of the war. The Mark 8 fire control radar aboard American battleships could track multiple targets simultaneously while providing continuous range, bearing, and speed data to mechanical fire control computers. These systems calculated precise firing solutions that compensated for ship movement, target motion, wind drift, and atmospheric conditions with an accuracy that exceeded human capability by orders of magnitude. Lieutenant Shigeru Nishino, fire control officer aboard heavy cruiser Mogami, had witnessed the engagement from his battle station in the ship's main director tower. His post-war memoirs described the terror of facing enemy gunnery that seemed to possess supernatural accuracy. American shells consistently straddled Japanese vessels despite the darkness and the confusion of high-speed maneuvering. The psychological effect of being unable to locate enemy vessels while receiving devastating accurate fire had shattered the confidence of experienced Japanese naval personnel. The destruction of Vice Admiral Nishimura's Southern Force represented more than tactical defeat. It demonstrated the technological obsolescence of Japanese naval equipment and doctrine. The Imperial Japanese Navy had invested enormous resources in optical rangefinders, mechanical fire control systems, and night fighting techniques that emphasized superior training and aggressive tactics. These traditional advantages had proven worthless against American radar systems that could track targets and direct gunfire with mechanical precision regardless of visibility conditions. Admiral Takeo Kurita's center force, approaching San Bernardino Strait simultaneously with Nishimura's advance through Surigao Strait, received fragmentary radio reports of the Southern Force's destruction with growing apprehension. The scale of American technological superiority suggested that Japanese naval forces faced annihilation against enemies equipped with radar systems and fire control computers that had revolutionized naval warfare. Kurita's subsequent decision to withdraw after the battle off Samar reflected, in part, his awareness of Japanese technological inferiority. The radar operators aboard USS West Virginia had tracked the destruction of Japanese vessels with mechanical precision throughout the engagement. Seaman First Class Robert Morrison, operating the ship's SG surface search radar, later described watching enemy contacts disappear from his scope as American gunfire found its targets. The radar returns from battleship Yamashiro gradually weakened as the vessel absorbed hit after hit, until the contact finally vanished entirely as she capsized and sank beneath the dark waters of Surigao Strait. The 16-inch guns of the American battle line had demonstrated their devastating effectiveness when directed by advanced fire control systems. Each 2,700-pound armor-piercing shell carried sufficient explosive power to penetrate the heaviest Japanese armor protection while delivering catastrophic damage to internal systems. The high-capacity shells used against lightly armored targets created blast effects that could disable entire sections of enemy vessels with single hits. When multiple battleships concentrated their fire against individual targets, the cumulative effect approached overkill. Commander Yasuo Sato, executive officer of destroyer Shigure, provided one of the few detailed Japanese accounts of the engagement. His ship had been positioned at the rear of the Southern Force Formation and had witnessed the systematic destruction of larger vessels by American radar-directed fire. Sato described the horror of watching battleship Yamashiro absorb dozens of major-caliber hits, while being unable to deliver effective return fire against enemies that remained invisible in the darkness. The technological revolution in naval gunnery had rendered traditional Japanese advantages obsolete almost overnight. The Imperial Japanese Navy had emphasized night fighting capabilities throughout the 1930s, developing tactics and training programs that maximized the advantages of darkness in surface combat. These traditional skills had proven worthless against American radar systems that could detect, track, and engage enemy vessels with greater accuracy at night than Japanese forces could achieve in daylight using optical systems. The fire control systems aboard USS Tennessee represented the pinnacle of American naval technology in 1944. The Mark 34 director system could automatically track targets while calculating precise firing solutions based on continuous radar data. The ship's 14-inch guns responded to electronic commands with mechanical precision, their salvos consistently straddling Japanese vessels despite high-speed maneuvering and deteriorating visibility conditions. The technological advantage was so overwhelming that Tennessee's gunners achieved hit rates exceeding 80% during the engagement. Petty Officer First Class Ichiro Yamamoto, serving aboard battleship Yamashiro's main battery, had experienced the transition from confidence to terror as American shells began falling with devastating accuracy. His post-war testimony described the progressive destruction of his ship's fire control systems as radar-directed fire methodically eliminated Japanese gunnery capabilities. The inability to accurately locate enemy vessels while receiving precise return fire had created a tactical situation that Japanese training had never addressed. The strategic implications of American technological superiority extended throughout the Pacific theater as reports of Surigao Strait reached Japanese naval headquarters. Admiral Toyota recognized that his remaining battleships and heavy cruisers faced annihilation against enemies equipped with radar fire control systems that rendered traditional naval tactics obsolete. The decision to preserve surviving capital ships rather than commit them to further surface actions reflected the Imperial Japanese Navy's acknowledgement of technological defeat. The Mark 8 fire control radar aboard USS California could track targets at ranges exceeding 35,000 yards, while providing continuous fire control data to the ship's gunnery computers. This capability enabled California's 14-inch guns to engage Japanese vessels before they could close to effective fighting range using traditional optical fire control systems. The technological advantage was so decisive that American battleships could destroy enemy forces while remaining beyond the reach of effective return fire. Lieutenant Commander George Patterson, damage control officer aboard heavy cruiser Mogami, had supervised desperate efforts to save his ship as American shells systematically destroyed her vital systems. His detailed report described the progressive failure of fire control equipment, communication systems, and propulsion machinery under the impact of radar-directed gunnery. The precision of American fire had enabled them to target specific areas of Japanese vessels, methodically eliminating their combat effectiveness before delivering fatal blows. The psychological trauma experienced by Japanese naval personnel at Surigao Strait would influence their performance throughout the remainder of the war. Survivors described the helplessness of facing enemy gunnery that seemed to possess supernatural accuracy while being unable to effectively return fire due to technological limitations. This psychological defeat complemented the physical destruction of Japanese vessels and personnel, creating demoralization that extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. The fire control computers aboard American battleships represented sophisticated mechanical calculating machines that could solve complex gunnery problems with greater speed and accuracy than human operators. These systems calculated precise firing solutions based on continuous radar tracking data, while compensating for multiple variables that had previously required manual estimation. The resulting accuracy enabled American gunners to consistently hit maneuvering targets at extreme ranges in conditions where traditional optical fire control would have been ineffective. Seaman Second Class Takashi Sato, serving aboard destroyer Asagumo, had witnessed the annihilation of larger Japanese vessels before his own ship was caught in the crossfire between American battleships and cruisers. His survival testimony described watching 16-inch shells pass completely through his destroyer's light construction before exploding, creating massive holes that flooded the engine rooms within minutes. The overwhelming destructive power of American heavy artillery had rendered Japanese destroyer construction inadequate for surface combat against technologically superior opponents. The Battle of Surigao Strait validated American naval doctrine emphasizing technological superiority and concentrated firepower over traditional concepts of individual ship combat. The 6 battleships of Admiral Oldendorf's battle line had functioned as an integrated weapons system, their radar-directed guns coordinated to achieve maximum destructive effect against approaching Japanese forces. This concentration of technologically advanced firepower had enabled the complete destruction of an enemy force while suffering minimal American casualties. The radar tracking capabilities of American destroyers had provided continuous surveillance of Japanese movements throughout the night of October 24 to 25, 1944. Destroyer Squadron 56 under Captain Roland Smoot had used radar data to coordinate devastating torpedo attacks against Nishimura's southern force before the Japanese vessels reached the American battle line. This preliminary action had damaged several Japanese ships and disrupted their formation, making them easier targets for the radar-directed guns of American battleships. Chief Petty Officer Hiroshi Tanaka, serving as chief gunners mate aboard battleship Yamashiro, had operated the ship's main battery director throughout the engagement. His post-war account described the frustration of attempting to engage invisible enemies while receiving devastating accurate return fire. Japanese optical rangefinders and mechanical fire control systems had proven inadequate against American vessels that could deliver precision gunnery from ranges where visual target identification was impossible. The technological lessons of Surigao Strait would influence naval development for decades as the decisive importance of radar and fire control systems became apparent to military planners worldwide. The engagement had demonstrated that vessels not equipped with comparable electronic systems faced obsolescence against technologically advanced opponents. Future naval construction would emphasize radar capabilities and fire control computers rather than the heavy armor and large-caliber guns that had dominated previous generations of warship design. The 16-inch guns of USS Maryland had fired 48 rounds during the engagement, achieving an estimated hit rate of 75% against Japanese vessels maneuvering at high speed in complete darkness. This unprecedented accuracy reflected the effectiveness of radar fire control systems in eliminating the uncertainties that had characterized traditional naval gunnery. The technological advantage had enabled American forces to engage and destroy enemy vessels with an efficiency that would have been impossible using conventional fire control methods. Commander Kenji Miyazaki, captain of destroyer Michishio, had attempted to coordinate torpedo attacks against the American battle line before his ship was sunk by destroyer gunfire during the preliminary phases of the engagement. His final radio transmission described the futility of traditional Japanese tactics against enemies equipped with radar systems that could detect and track torpedo-launching vessels at extreme ranges. The technological superiority of American forces had neutralized Japanese advantages in torpedo warfare while maximizing their own gunnery capabilities. The strategic consequences of American victory at Surigao Strait extended beyond immediate tactical results to encompass fundamental changes in naval warfare doctrine. The engagement had validated the decisive importance of technological superiority while demonstrating the obsolescence of traditional surface combat tactics. Japanese naval forces had lost not only ships and personnel but also confidence in their equipment and training, creating psychological effects that would influence their performance throughout the remainder of the Pacific War. The precision fire control systems aboard USS Pennsylvania had enabled the battleship to engage multiple Japanese targets simultaneously, while maintaining devastating accuracy throughout the engagement. Pennsylvania's 14-inch guns had methodically destroyed enemy vessels with an efficiency that reflected the technological revolution in naval gunnery. The ship's Mark 34 director system had automatically compensated for target motion and atmospheric conditions while calculating precise firing solutions based on continuous radar tracking data. Ensign Masato Yoshida, serving aboard heavy cruiser Mogami's bridge, had observed the progressive destruction of Japanese vessels as American radar-directed fire found its targets with mechanical precision. His survival account described the terror of facing enemy gunnery that seemed to anticipate every Japanese maneuver while delivering devastating accurate fire from invisible positions. The psychological impact of technological inferiority had complemented the physical destruction of Japanese forces, creating demoralization that extended throughout the Imperial Japanese Navy. The aftermath of Surigao Strait would demonstrate the broader implications of technological superiority in modern warfare. American industrial capacity had produced not only advanced radar and fire control systems but also the trained personnel necessary to operate these complex technologies effectively. Japanese forces, increasingly isolated by Allied submarine warfare and strategic bombing, had been unable to develop comparable capabilities despite their traditional advantages in training and fighting spirit. The fire control radars aboard American battleships had maintained continuous tracking of Japanese vessels throughout the engagement, providing real-time data that enabled sustained, accurate gunnery, regardless of enemy evasive actions. This technological capability had fundamentally altered the dynamics of surface combat by eliminating the traditional advantages of darkness and maneuver. Japanese vessels equipped with optical fire control systems had been unable to compete effectively against enemies possessing electronic targeting capabilities. Lieutenant Junior Grade Shinji Nakamura, communication officer aboard destroyer Shigure, had coordinated desperate attempts to maintain contact between scattered Japanese vessels as American fire disrupted their formations. His post-war testimony described the progressive breakdown of Japanese tactical coordination as radar-directed gunnery eliminated command ships and communications equipment. The technological superiority of American forces had enabled them to disrupt Japanese tactical organization while maintaining their own coordination through advanced radio and radar systems. The Battle of Surigao Strait marked the practical end of the battleship era in naval warfare, demonstrating both the maximum potential and ultimate limitations of these massive weapons platforms. American battleships equipped with radar fire control had achieved devastating success against technologically inferior opponents, but the engagement also highlighted the vulnerability of surface vessels to advanced targeting systems. Future naval development would emphasize missile systems and electronic warfare capabilities rather than the heavy guns and thick armor that had dominated naval construction since the early 20th century. The technological revolution that enabled American victory at Surigao Strait had been years in development, reflecting massive investments in research and industrial capacity that Japanese forces could not match. The radar systems, fire control computers, and gunnery directors installed aboard American battleships represented cutting-edge military technology that had been integrated into effective weapons systems through extensive testing and refinement. This technological advantage, when combined with superior tactical position and numerical strength, had enabled the complete destruction of an experienced enemy force. Chief Fire Controlman Robert Johnson, operating USS West Virginia's Mark 8 fire control radar, had tracked the systematic destruction of Japanese vessels throughout the engagement. His detailed logs recorded the progressive weakening of radar returns from enemy ships as American gunfire found its targets with devastating effect. The technological precision of radar-directed gunnery had enabled accurate engagement of maneuvering targets at ranges where traditional optical fire control would have been completely ineffective. The strategic lessons of Surigao Strait would influence American naval planning throughout the remainder of World War II and beyond. The engagement had validated doctrines emphasizing technological superiority and concentrated firepower while demonstrating the obsolescence of traditional surface combat tactics against advanced fire control systems. Future naval construction would prioritize electronic capabilities and precision gunnery over the massive armor protection that had characterized previous generations of battleship design. The complete destruction of Vice Admiral Nishimura's Southern Force represented the culmination of technological trends that had been developing throughout the Pacific War. American industrial capacity had produced increasingly sophisticated radar and fire control systems, while Japanese forces had been unable to keep pace due to material shortages and industrial limitations. The technological gap had become so significant by October 1944 that traditional concepts of naval combat were no longer applicable when advanced and obsolete systems opposed each other. In the pre-dawn darkness of October 25, 1944, as the last flames from burning Japanese vessels flickered across the waters of Surigao Strait, the technological revolution in naval warfare had achieved its most decisive expression. The 16-inch guns of the American battle line, when directed by advanced radar fire control systems, had demonstrated capabilities that rendered traditional naval tactics obsolete. The engagement would be remembered not only as a tactical victory, but as the moment when technological superiority achieved overwhelming dominance in naval combat, establishing principles that would influence military development for generations to come. The reverberations from Surigao Strait spread throughout the Imperial Japanese Navy like a contagion of technological despair. At the combined fleet headquarters in Tokyo, staff officers pored over fragmentary radio intercepts and survivor testimonies with growing comprehension of the magnitude of American technological advancement. Captain Atsushi Oi, senior staff officer for operations, drafted preliminary assessments that painted a grim picture of Japanese naval capabilities against enemies, equipped with radar fire control systems that seemed to possess supernatural accuracy. The technical specifications of American fire control systems remained largely mysterious to Japanese intelligence services, but the practical effects had been demonstrated with devastating clarity. Radio intercepts indicated that American battleships had achieved hit rates exceeding 70% during the engagement, a level of accuracy that Japanese naval officers considered impossible under night combat conditions. The ability to deliver precision gunnery at extreme ranges in complete darkness represented a technological capability that fundamentally altered the nature of naval warfare. Rear Admiral Keizo Komura, commanding the 10th Destroyer Flotilla from his flagship at Linga Roads, received detailed reports from Destroyer Shigeru's commanding officer regarding the annihilation of Nishimura's Southern Force. Commander Tomichi Hara's account emphasized the helplessness of Japanese forces against American radar-directed gunnery that could engage and destroy enemy vessels before they could close to effective fighting range. The technological implications were clear. Japanese naval forces faced obsolescence against enemies equipped with advanced electronic systems. The destruction of battleship Yamashiro had been particularly methodical and devastating, according to survivors recovered from the waters of Surigao Strait. American 16-inch shells had systematically destroyed the battleship's fire control systems, communications equipment, and main armament before delivering fatal blows to her engineering spaces. The precision of enemy gunnery suggested that American fire control systems could target specific areas of Japanese vessels, eliminating their combat effectiveness before administering coup de grace salvos. Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, former fighter pilot who had transitioned to naval intelligence duties following combat injuries, analyzed American radar capabilities based on survivor accounts from Surigao Strait. His technical assessment concluded that enemy fire control systems possessed accuracy levels that exceeded Japanese optical rangefinding by orders of magnitude. The ability to maintain continuous target tracking while calculating precise firing solutions represented a technological advantage that Japanese industry could not replicate with available resources. The psychological impact of radar-directed gunnery extended beyond individual engagements to influence Japanese naval doctrine and strategic planning. Traditional concepts emphasizing superior training, aggressive tactics, and fighting spirit had proven inadequate against enemies equipped with technological systems that eliminated the human variables in naval combat. American fire control computers could calculate gunnery solutions with mechanical precision while Japanese forces relied on human operators using outdated equipment and procedures. Captain Toshikazu Ami, serving as operations officer aboard Admiral Kurita's flagship Yamato, received radio reports of the Southern Force's destruction while Center Force approached San Bernardino Strait. The scale of American technological superiority suggested that Japanese naval forces faced annihilation in any surface engagement against radar-equipped opponents. Kurita's subsequent withdrawal after the battle off Samar reflected, in part, his awareness that Japanese gunnery systems could not compete effectively against American fire control technology. The technical details of the Mark 8 fire control radar aboard American battleships would remain classified for decades, but its practical effects had been demonstrated with devastating clarity at Surigao Strait. The system could track multiple targets simultaneously while providing continuous range, bearing, and velocity data to mechanical fire control computers. These machines calculated precise firing solutions that compensated for ship movement, target motion, wind drift, atmospheric conditions, and projectile ballistics with accuracy that exceeded human capability. Seaman First Class Hiroshi Matsumoto, serving aboard battleship Yamashiro's after turret, had witnessed the progressive destruction of his ship's fire control capabilities as American shells systematically eliminated Japanese gunnery systems. His survival testimony described the terror of being unable to locate enemy vessels while receiving devastating accurate return fire. The psychological effect of facing invisible enemies who could deliver precision gunnery had shattered the confidence of experienced Japanese naval personnel. The strategic implications of American technological superiority at Surigao Strait influenced Japanese naval planning throughout the remainder of 1944 and beyond. Admiral Toyota recognized that his remaining capital ships faced destruction if committed to surface actions against radar-equipped American forces. The decision to preserve battleships Yamato and Musashi rather than risk them in conventional engagements reflected the Imperial Japanese Navy's acknowledgement of technological defeat in surface warfare. The 14-inch guns of USS California had achieved unprecedented accuracy during the engagement, firing 63 rounds and scoring an estimated 47 hits against Japanese vessels maneuvering at high speed in complete darkness. This 75% hit rate reflected the effectiveness of radar fire control in eliminating the uncertainties that had characterized traditional naval gunnery. Fire control computers calculated precise firing solutions based on continuous tracking data, while compensating for variables that human operators could only estimate. Commander Reizo Tanaka, the Imperial Japanese Navy's most experienced destroyer commander, analyzed survivor reports from Surigao Strait with growing appreciation of American technological advantages. His assessment concluded that traditional Japanese torpedo tactics had been neutralized by enemy radar systems that could detect approaching destroyers at extreme ranges while directing devastating gunfire with mechanical precision. The technological revolution in naval warfare had eliminated Japanese advantages in night fighting and close-range torpedo combat. The fire control systems aboard USS Tennessee represented a quantum leap in naval gunnery technology, combining advanced radar tracking with sophisticated mechanical computers that calculated firing solutions with unprecedented accuracy. The Mark 34 director system automatically compensated for ship motion, target movement, and atmospheric conditions while maintaining continuous target designation throughout high-speed maneuvers. This technological capability had enabled Tennessee's 14-inch guns to achieve hit rates that would have been impossible using traditional optical fire control methods. Petty Officer Second Class Kenji Watanabe, serving as a lookout aboard heavy cruiser Mogami, had observed the systematic destruction of Japanese vessels by radar-directed American fire. His post-war account described the horror of watching enemy shells consistently straddle Japanese ships despite radical evasive maneuvers and the cover of darkness. The precision of American gunnery had seemed supernatural to sailors trained in traditional optical fire control techniques that required visual contact with targets. The technological lessons learned at Surigao Strait would influence American naval development throughout the Cold War era and beyond. The engagement had validated the decisive importance of electronic systems in modern warfare while demonstrating the obsolescence of platforms not equipped with comparable technology. Future naval construction would emphasize radar capabilities, fire control computers, and electronic warfare systems, rather than the massive guns and armor protection that had characterized previous generations of warship design. The destruction of destroyer Yamagumo during the preliminary phases of the engagement had demonstrated the vulnerability of Japanese vessels to American radar-directed fire. Destroyer Squadron 56 had used SG surface search radar to coordinate devastating torpedo attacks while maintaining accurate gunfire against maneuvering targets in complete darkness. The technological advantage had enabled American destroyers to engage Japanese forces at ranges where return fire would be largely ineffective. Lieutenant Commander Hideo Yamamoto, executive officer of destroyer Michishio, had attempted to coordinate torpedo attacks against the American battle line before his ship was sunk by radar-directed gunfire. His final action report described the futility of traditional Japanese tactics against enemies equipped with electronic systems that could detect, track, and engage Japanese vessels with supernatural accuracy. The technological superiority of American forces had neutralized Japanese advantages while maximizing their own capabilities. The Mark 38 director systems aboard American battleships represented the culmination of years of development in naval fire control technology. These sophisticated devices could automatically track targets while calculating precise firing solutions based on continuous radar data. The systems compensated for multiple variables simultaneously, including ship motion, target movement, wind conditions, atmospheric density, and projectile characteristics. This technological capability had enabled American gunners to achieve accuracy levels that would have been impossible using traditional methods. Chief Gunner's Mate Robert Sullivan, serving aboard USS West Virginia's main battery, had operated the battleship's 16-inch guns throughout the engagement with devastating effect. His detailed logs recorded 93 rounds fired with an estimated 70 hits against Japanese vessels, demonstrating the unprecedented accuracy of radar-directed gunnery. The technological advantage had enabled West Virginia to engage and destroy enemy targets while remaining beyond the effective range of Japanese return fire. The psychological trauma experienced by Japanese survivors of Surigao Strait would influence their performance throughout the remainder of the war. Petty Officer Yoshio Kodama, rescued from the waters after Yamashiro's sinking, described the helplessness of facing enemy gunnery that seemed to anticipate every Japanese maneuver. The technological inferiority of Japanese fire control systems had created a tactical situation where experienced naval personnel felt utterly powerless against mechanically superior opponents. The strategic consequences of American technological dominance extended throughout the Pacific theater as reports of Surigao Strait reached Japanese naval commands. Rear Admiral Mato Mogami, Chief of Staff to Admiral Yamamoto and later commander of the 5th Air Fleet, recognized that Japanese naval aviation faced similar technological challenges against American radar-equipped fighters and anti-aircraft systems. The comprehensive nature of American technological superiority threatened Japanese capabilities across all domains of naval warfare. The fire control computers aboard USS Maryland had processed continuous radar tracking data throughout the engagement, calculating precise firing solutions for the battleship's 16-inch guns. These mechanical calculating machines could solve complex gunnery problems with greater speed and accuracy than human operators while compensating for variables that had previously required manual estimation. The resulting precision had enabled Maryland to engage multiple Japanese targets simultaneously while maintaining devastating accuracy throughout the action. Ensign Toshio Hashimoto, serving aboard destroyer Asagumo's bridge, had witnessed the annihilation of larger Japanese vessels before his own ship was caught in American crossfire. His survival testimony described watching 16-inch shells pass completely through the destroyer's light construction before exploding, creating massive holes that flooded the engineering spaces within minutes. The overwhelming destructive power of American heavy artillery had rendered Japanese destroyer design inadequate for surface combat against technologically superior opponents. The Battle of Surigao Strait had validated American investment in naval technology during the 3 years following Pearl Harbor. The radar systems, fire control computers, and gunnery directors installed aboard reconstructed battleships had transformed these vessels into precision weapons platforms capable of engaging and destroying enemy forces with unprecedented effectiveness. The technological advantage, when combined with superior tactical position and numerical strength, had enabled the complete destruction of an experienced enemy force while suffering minimal American casualties. The SG surface search radars aboard American destroyers had provided comprehensive surveillance of Japanese movements throughout the night, enabling coordinated attacks that disrupted enemy formations before they reached the main battle line. Destroyer Squadron 56 had used radar data to coordinate devastating torpedo attacks against Nishimura's southern force while maintaining continuous gunfire support. This technological capability had multiplied the effectiveness of American forces while neutralizing traditional Japanese advantages in night surface combat. Commander Yasuo Sato, executive officer of Destroyer Shigure, had provided detailed testimony regarding the systematic destruction of Japanese forces by American radar-directed fire. His account emphasized the precision of enemy gunnery that could consistently straddle maneuvering targets at extreme ranges in complete darkness. The technological superiority of American fire control systems had eliminated the traditional advantages of night combat that Japanese forces had cultivated through years of intensive training. The technological revolution in naval warfare had fundamentally altered the relationship between offensive and defensive capabilities by the time of Surigao Strait. Advanced radar systems enabled early detection and continuous tracking of enemy forces, while sophisticated fire control computers provided precision gunnery that could engage targets at maximum effective range. These capabilities had shifted the advantage decisively toward forces equipped with the most advanced technology available, rendering traditional tactical concepts obsolete. The precision gunnery demonstrated by USS Pennsylvania during the engagement reflected the effectiveness of integrated radar and fire control systems in eliminating the uncertainties that had characterized traditional naval combat. Pennsylvania's 14-inch guns had fired 48 rounds with an estimated hit rate of 83%, demonstrating accuracy levels that would have been impossible using optical fire control methods. The technological advantage had enabled American battleships to engage and destroy Japanese vessels with mechanical efficiency. Lieutenant Junior Grade Makoto Suzuki, communication officer aboard heavy cruiser Mogami, had coordinated desperate attempts to maintain tactical communication between scattered Japanese vessels as American fire disrupted their formation. His post-war account described the progressive breakdown of Japanese command and control as radar-directed gunnery systematically eliminated flag officers and communication equipment. The technological superiority of American forces had enabled them to disrupt Japanese organization while maintaining their own coordination through advanced systems. The strategic lessons of Surigao Strait would influence American naval doctrine throughout the remainder of World War II and the subsequent Cold War period. The engagement had demonstrated the decisive importance of technological superiority in modern warfare, while validating doctrines that emphasized electronic systems and precision gunnery over traditional concepts of individual ship combat. Future naval development would prioritize radar capabilities and fire control computers over the massive armor and heavy guns that had dominated previous construction programs. The complete annihilation of Vice Admiral Nishimura's Southern Force represented the culmination of technological trends that had been developing throughout the Pacific War. American industrial capacity had produced increasingly sophisticated electronic systems, while Japanese forces had been unable to maintain technological parity due to resource limitations and industrial constraints. The technological gap had become so significant by October 1944 that traditional naval combat concepts were no longer applicable when advanced and obsolete systems opposed each other. The fire control radars aboard American cruisers had provided supporting fire throughout the engagement, their 8-inch and 6-inch guns adding to the devastating barrage that systematically destroyed Japanese vessels. Heavy cruiser Louisville had fired 103 rounds of 8-inch ammunition with an estimated hit rate of 65%, demonstrating the effectiveness of radar fire control even aboard smaller vessels. Light cruisers Denver and Columbia had engaged Japanese destroyers with their 6-inch batteries, achieving accuracy levels that reflected the technological superiority of American fire control systems. Chief Petty Officer Jiro Tanaka, serving as damage control chief aboard battleship Yamashiro, had supervised desperate efforts to save his ship as American shells systematically destroyed vital systems. His detailed report described the progressive failure of electrical power, fire control equipment, and communication systems under the impact of radar-directed gunnery. The precision of American fire had enabled them to target specific areas of Japanese vessels, methodically eliminating their combat effectiveness before delivering fatal salvos. The technological implications of Surigao Strait extended beyond immediate tactical considerations to encompass fundamental changes in naval architecture and design philosophy. The engagement had demonstrated that vessels not equipped with advanced radar and fire control systems faced obsolescence against technologically superior opponents. Future warship construction would emphasize electronic capabilities and fire control computers rather than the thick armor and large-caliber guns that had characterized naval development since the dreadnought revolution. The radar tracking capabilities demonstrated by American forces at Surigao Strait would influence naval development for decades as the decisive importance of electronic surveillance became apparent to military planners worldwide. The ability to detect, track, and engage enemy forces at extreme ranges in all weather conditions, represented a revolutionary advance in naval warfare capability. Traditional concepts of stealth and surprise had been rendered obsolete by radar systems that could maintain continuous surveillance of vast ocean areas. Seaman First Class Takashi Yamada, serving aboard destroyer Michishio's engine room, had experienced the terror of being trapped below decks as American shells systematically destroyed his ship's hull and machinery. His survival account described the progressive flooding of engineering spaces as radar-directed fire found its targets with mechanical precision. The technological superiority of American gunnery had enabled them to achieve devastating accuracy against maneuvering targets in conditions where traditional fire control would have been completely ineffective. The Battle of Surigao Strait marked the end of an era in naval warfare, demonstrating both the maximum potential and ultimate limitations of traditional surface combat vessels. American battleships equipped with radar fire control had achieved overwhelming success against technologically inferior opponents, but the engagement also foreshadowed the obsolescence of gun-armed surface vessels against advanced missile systems and electronic warfare capabilities. The technological revolution that enabled American victory would continue to transform naval warfare throughout the remainder of the 20th century. As dawn broke over the Philippines on October 25, 1944, the waters of Surigao Strait bore silent witness to the technological revolution that had transformed naval warfare. The systematic destruction of Vice Admiral Nishimura's southern force by radar-directed American gunnery had demonstrated the decisive importance of electronic systems in modern combat. The engagement would be remembered not only as a tactical victory, but as the moment when technological superiority achieved its most complete expression in naval warfare, establishing principles that would influence military development for generations to come. The 16-inch guns of the American battle line, when directed by advanced fire control computers, had rendered traditional naval tactics obsolete while demonstrating the overwhelming advantages available to forces equipped with the most sophisticated technology of their era.